Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. As always, I'm super excited to be here with you and excited to welcome in our guest tonight. We are talking to comedian Ren Q, Dawe, comedian, activist, and the first trans comedian to perform in all 50 states with the historic Here to Pee tour, raising funds for LGBTQ plus nonprofits nationwide. Everybody, welcome to the show, Ren.
Hi, y'all. Thanks so much for having me. So happy to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for reaching out and coming on. I'm really excited to uh, be able to talk to activists and comedians, people out there who are very much on the front lines, putting yourself out there and spreading the good word about the trans experience. And I think the comedy, I've talked to a couple people about that, comedy is one of the really great ways of breaking that ice and getting in. Let's kind of go down that tangent a little bit really quick before we get into the main set of questions. How have you found that? Is that what you've seen where comedy kind of makes it easier to enter into the deeper conversations, the conversations that are more meaningful and can get the idea across to folks?
Oh, totally. I mean, I think that just humor is one of the most humanizing things that we can do with people, right? And as we're like actively trying to combat specifically billions of dollars of anti-trans propaganda to specifically dehumanize trans people, right? That like any element, any tactic to kind of rehumanize trans people in people's minds, I think is like the thing that we have to do. And I just think that it's so much harder to be cruel, frankly, or, be really, really aggressive perhaps with people that you want to be on the end of a joke with. That is like the swiftest form of allyship that we can make is like a very quick joke, right? Then suddenly puts you on the same line of understanding. Even if it's about something that is, in some ways meaningless, right? Even if it's just like, the funny thing about parallel lines, they got so much in common, it's a shame they're never gonna meet. You know what I mean? Like suddenly, like you and I are on the same end of enjoying a math joke together. And that is just like the most, you know what I mean? Just even if it's like the smallest little common denominator, I think that it gives us that common denominator that we can understand something as being kind of the same. We can understand something as having a similar vibe of being funny, of being amusing, or being really outrageous, even right, perhaps, and or shocking. Like all of those things have a place in comedy, and I think that it also is just a really it's often done in person, right? Of like being able to experience kind of laughter with somebody in person. And it's kind of rare that I'm in a lot of other situations where I'm sitting down, standing up, whatever, having somebody kind of being willing to just listen, to what I have to say and vice versa, right? Especially when they're folks across the aisle. So it gives us kind of the excuse to actually have like a civil discussion. And it does so by making a lot of our points kind of go down with a spoonful of sugar. It's a lot easier to just be able to kind of like agree with something if you're like amused by it
Hmm.
versus if you're like deeply offended by it. And so I think it puts it in that context for people and makes it a lot easier. At least it has been in my experience.
Nice. And how do you figure out and just sort of what is your approach in your comedy? Like how deep into some of the specifics of the trans experience do you go? And where do you find that kind of balance of like oversharing or going into things that aren't relatable versus things that people need to know about and finding that way to make it funny so that you bring them along with you?
That's a great question. And I think that it really is just audience dependent, frankly. There are some straight rooms where I'm just like, I don't know if they would actually go for that joke. And it's usually not even so much about trans stuff as it is just kind of a gendered experience. I have a specific joke that basically compares, like, why do we have pre-lubed condoms but not pre-lubed tampons? Women and like femme people, like AFAB people, they love that joke, right? They can really get down on that joke. It's kind of rare that cis dudes really enjoy that joke. I think they find it amusing, but it's not necessarily going to hit as hard for them. And so I might kind of swap that joke out for something that might resonate with them a little bit more easily. But interestingly, kind of the trans stuff is almost across the board, I'd say, like pretty easily digestible for folks. And I think that I I really admire people that work as like clean, where they are not referencing sex, drugs, or swear words, right? It makes your content a lot more family friendly. It makes you a lot more bookable. It makes you a lot more kind of commercially available, just via FCC standards. I also think that we are in a bit of a crux of this moment with that regarding trans content, because even if I'm talking about nothing sexual, I'm talking about nothing taboo at all, like literally just talking about me going to Whole Foods and buying a plant. The fact that it has a transness to it immediately makes it quote unquote blue content, which means that it's not clean, means that it's quite raunchy, or it is like, not suitable for all audiences, because transness is inherently sexualized and it's inherently taboo. And I don't think that that is actually true, but that is like the political moment that we find ourselves in. And so I think that there are probably smarter ways to play around it than what I do, but I have found great success in being able to kind of try to play with that dichotomy where can I make the most just silly, like random, like just, I mean, just literally like celery. Can I take celery as a topic and make it just the most raunchy joke, the most dirty blue joke that I can? And then can I take something that's maybe really actually quite taboo, like the size of my clitoris on testosterone, and turn that into something cleaner and make it as clean as possible. So that way to me, there's a little bit of like rebelliousness that helps kind of motivate that and inspire that, I think, of being able to show like your rules aren't really suited for this group. And I also think that it just kind of makes all of that a little bit more easily digestible in the set itself, right? Where it's like if we were just kind of like oohing and eyeing at this joke about celery, because it felt so taboo. And suddenly we're just kind of like giggling and lightly applauding for this joke about my genitals, which is arguably way dirtier, in a real way. Suddenly the landscape seems to shift a little bit in
Mhm.
like where our kind of perceived notions of inappropriateness come from. And so I think that I know it's like a long answer to your question. I think that that's kind of how I try to approach it. And it's also just like, yeah, really every audience is different. And so paying attention to who your audience is and what they're actually responding to and being willing to kind of talk to them and engage with them, even if you're not doing crowd work. Like I think that just having that attention to them, you're not just Campbell's noodle soup and you're the same every time. Like people aren't like that. And so being able to kind of like register what works for folks, what doesn't, it's very regional. And literally is like venue by venue going to be different.
Mm.
And so I think that you have to be able to cater to your audience more than any one specific demographic or like concern, you know?
Yeah, it's gotta. I have to assume that that's sort of the key to success in something like this. Trying to have a trans comedy tour that is visiting all 50 states and have success in that. You've got to be really good at reading those audiences and catering to them. And I think that I feel like that's where the big challenge comes in.
Yeah, you're apt to say that, and thank you. That's like flattering. I would say that Bailey Pope has like a really wonderful perspective around this. She's a fantastic trans comic based in Brooklyn, one of my favorite people I've ever gotten to work with, and she's just brilliant. And she does this really interesting kind of crowd work where it's almost like negging a little bit, where she'll tease them. And sometimes audiences really don't want to be teased, but Bailey somehow finds a way to do it in like it's like even though she's teasing, you can just feel this affection kind of exuding out of her while she's doing it for the audience, and so they play along with it because it feels like closeness, and it feels like they're sharing in something. And the way she tries to put it is like, especially in traveling and doing like regional content, is like, how can I find what is weird about you guys and then be able to share in delighting about it with you. Like, "Oh, y'all are weird. I'm weird too. I love that." And that's exactly the approach that I've tried to kinda copy, from her in my own way, right, in my own kinda style, and I've found that to be very, like, successful in being able to more of just delight in people. I think that comedy now has a reputation for, especially in the era of, like, Joe Rogan, Kill Tony, right? Comedy is very roast heavy right now, and I think people think about free speech in comedy as being like, "I should be allowed to be the biggest asshole possible." Um, I don't think that's necessarily incorrect, I think it's incomplete. And I think that, I've been really excited to see how much people enjoy delighting in their weirdness, as much as we've seen them, enjoy ridiculing each other for weirdness.
Well, let's focus on our audience for a moment here and dive into our set of questions to find out about your story and the things that they're here to learn specifically about. How did you choose a name that suited you and felt like it fit you?
That's such a fun question. I mean, just to be completely candid, so my born name, my dead name, if you will, was Kira, which I hated. And I was so nervous when I came out. I came out in, gosh, 2014, something like that. And was so terrified of my community not accepting me growing up in a tiny town in West Virginia and my family having a hard time with it. I saw people struggle with names and pronouns all the time. And it was really frightening to me that that would dehumanize me in their eyes if I actually fully changed my name. So I originally did like a soft step and I went from Kira to Kieran. And I just put an N on the end of it, which I didn't hate. Um, but it wasn't great because then people would just call me Karen by accident, which is just so much like you can't like give yourself a name and then have it be like the most hated name in the United States at the time. You know what I mean? Like it was just a bad move and so much worse. It just gave me so much dysphoria. It was awful. And so I was like, well, never mind. And I basically just went by nicknames for like years, literally 3 years of my life. I basically didn't hear my name at all. And we had some nicknames, some of which were in good taste and most of which were in very poor taste. Um, and I eventually kind of stumbled on Ren. I don't, I, it was like, it kind of happened in a couple ways where it was like it was close to Kieran, but not, it was all like an abbreviated version, but it wasn't even spelled the same, you know. So that was interesting that it was kind of like shortened. I wanted to be a Ben, but I was dating a Ben at the time, and that couldn't happen. Um, and so it felt like a nice kind of like offshoot from that. And there was like kind of like one or two real moments that like kind of sunk it in for me when I actually was like, oh, I'll try it out. Which was I'd been in a play. It was tech week. I was exhausted. I went to a coffee shop between like dress rehearsals to go get some coffee, and I was so tired. And the barista was like, "Can I get a name for the order?" And I just kind of like blanked out. Like I just didn't even I just like couldn't even like I like glitched out and I like couldn't because it had been like 2 years of going by nicknames and like I just didn't want to give my real name. It was just weird. And I just kind of he sees me like kind of glitch out and they were like, "Are you okay, dog?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm in a play right now," and like as if that was like a good enough excuse for why I couldn't remember my own name. And he just kind of chuckled and he was like, "A Renaissance man, cool," and just walked away and like made my coffee. And then when I got my coffee, it like, they'll like write your name on the side. It just said Ren Man. And I was just so tickled by that because I really felt like my like actual identity, while I was still grappling with it as far as my gender, my like real identity was kind of in the arts world. And so for it to be on point that way felt really good. The fact that it was almost close to the name that I had to choose in the first place and didn't end up liking felt like nice. It just I don't know, something just kind of finally clicked. I had tried on a lot of names. We tried to be a James, we tried to be a Glenn, we tried to be a Anthony, we tried like, we tried a lot of different stuff, right? And Nothing, it was like people would say it and it would feel like they were saying someone else's name. Like it wouldn't like trigger that response and I wouldn't turn around and I wouldn't, whatever. And I was like, wow, is this always going to be like this? And when he said like Ren man, when like I saw that on the cup, it felt like the way that you kind of get pulled when someone says your name, and you just kind of automatically like respond to it. And I didn't expect that to happen. It was really cool. And I don't know, I really have enjoyed Ren as a person,
Mm.
if that makes sense. I feel like I got to then kind of pick that name and step into that guy, and, I really like him. Ren seems to be very happy and creative and hardworking, and I like all those things, and so, yeah, I think that was, like, kinda how I came into it, and it's very sweet too. I love getting like the people when you have to like hand over your ID and they're like, "Oh, what a unique name," and I'm like, "Thanks, I picked it out myself," and they go, "Oh," because they think it's funny, and I go, "Oh," because it's polite. But it's like nice to have like an easier name that is somehow still unique sounding, I guess, to people. So that's kind of my name process.
Nice. And I do love that was sort of when people ask me how I got to my name, it's mostly process of elimination was what it was. And
Hmm.
you said you were dating a Ben at the time. That was one of the names you wanted to do. And that was sort of it for me is going through and being like, oh, I really like this name, but I've got two friends that are named that, and that's my aunt's name, and like all this is just like, you know,
That's so
um
real.
oh, my best friend's dog, and like,
Mhm,
so you
mhm,
and
mhm, and you're just like, "Michaela's a great name," except for that one person in the 7th grade that told me to go kill myself, so I named myself Michaela, That's so real. Yeah, process of elimination. That's a really good point. I hadn't really thought of it in those terms, but I think that's, like, a really accurate way to, like, kind of explain, like, how to actually find it.
so you found your name after coming out in a way, and so what was that process for you? Where did you start to come out? What prompted that as well?
Gosh, I mean, like, I guess it's like there's kinda like, when did you come out? When did you know? You know what I mean? Like, there's kinda like 2 in there. I think that, gosh, I came out, um, I guess I was just a kind of a fresh 18, really. I was already living on my own, and it just kinda got to a point of it being almost undeniable. I really was in denial for a long time. I had a lot of trans friends that were like, "Baby, are you trans?" And I was like, "I'm not trans, I just hate being a woman."
Did you do what a lot of trans mask folks do and come out as lesbian first, and then put the gender identity
Oh,
thing
yeah,
together?
we flipped to every letter that we possibly could, right? And, like, it really was, it's interesting because I don't necessarily think this is the case for a lot of kids now that we have a much more separate understanding of, like, sexuality and gender. But for me, it really took realizing that I was, like, a gay guy, if that makes sense, to kind of realize that I was a guy. Um, and yeah, I everyone assumed I was a lesbian because I was very tomboy-esque, and we were quite butch. And I tried being a lesbian so hard, and I love women. Like I still love women, and like it would they just and literally every girlfriend I had was just like, stop trying to be my boyfriend. And I was like, they don't know what you mean. Like just being me. Like, nope. Couldn't do it. That community was not very kind to me. I love lesbians, but, like, they just really could smell it on me. They were like, "You do not belong here." But I just very much wasn't straight. I knew that to be true, so I kinda went from, like, lesbian, and then I was bi, and then I had kinda, like, my femme phase where I was like, "You know what? Like, we're gonna shove all of that just as far down as we can, and we are just gonna be the girliest girl that you can possibly imagine." And I was miserable, and I almost killed myself. It was awful, and I tried to be, like, straight, and that was terrible. But I really liked men, and so that was, like, really confusing to be like, I, like, should be a lesbian, but I happen to like men a lot, and, like, I also really enjoyed dating women, but I didn't seem that women that enjoyed dating other women wanted to date me, and so that was a weird, that was, like, kind of a weird experience, of, like, not being both woman enough for straight men or for gay women, um, which was really, like, really just like just dysphoria creating, even though I like am not a girl. I like it was like I just this sense of like, why can't I do this? Like, why can't I be good at this? Like, it just feels impossible. Like, I'm trying my absolute hardest to fit into this role and to look the part and to sound the part and to like do the things that I presumed women were supposed to do in relationships or just kind of in public, and like was just failing all the time,
Can
and
can
or
I
at least
ask
felt
you
that way, and like that was like part of it.
yeah. Can I ask you at this point here then, we talked beforehand, before the show, about being an open book, and even talked about some sexuality stuff. What has your experience been? You said you didn't fit in with the lesbian crowd. They sort of smelled it on you, and you're like, then you don't belong here. What has it been as a gay man, dating with the parts that you have?
Yeah, I honestly, like, I know that this is not the case for all trans men, at all. I've heard a lot of really horrific stories from trans men in the gay community, and that is super true, and I just want to validate that. But like for me, I have had nothing but a positive experience, really genuinely. I have been so lucky, and I have really gotten around. And people have just been incredibly lovely, and affirming in ways that I didn't even know like one could be, if that makes sense. Like I was just like, but like I've had people just be so, forthright about like, oh, what is like a name that I can use for these parts for you, because I want to be able to compliment your parts, and like they're worthy of being complimented. So like how can I do that in a way that feels good? And I'm like, whoa, that's way more in depth than I have ever actually thought about that question. Like, and so that was just really nice. And I've gotten that more from like cis gay men than kind of anything. And like for a while it was very confusing to be attracted really to gay men. I really like, even when I was like a girl, right? Like I just was like, why do I want to sleep with these gay men? What is wrong with me? Like psychologically, that I want to like turn these gay men, but like I don't want to turn these gay men straight. Like I just want to be a gay man. And like that's really kind of what it came down to. And just the deep affirmation that came from like, having hookups with gay guys and having them be like, I usually don't like women, but I really like you. Like, that like, oh, that just like felt so satisfying in like in a real way. And like yeah, I would say that, for me, it is a little bit different because I'm verse, I'm a switch, and so I'm happy to kind of play, many a role sexually for people, and I'm also just very bi, right? So I'd say that, like, almost like kind of gender identity is gay guy, but, like, in practice, I'm just kinda everybody's fair game, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that it really just now for me is kind of like person by person, part by part, partner by partner, of just like what feels good. And I think that when I first was becoming more sexually active, I really thought that sex was like, there is something that must go into a hole, and that is sex. And that's just not actually true. Like I think that there's a lot of different ways to be sexual with people, and it doesn't actually always like it doesn't look like that a lot of the time. And that I've had some of the more like kind of profound and intimate experiences in like not penetrative capacities. Um I've been really lucky with like uh kind of the gay men that have like embraced me in the community, that really even just casually, right, even just in kind of casual capacities of people just really wanting to do well, kind of like in language and in terminology that sounds good, while also wanting to be kind of like fun and taboo and dirty talk. I think that that's really lovely. Like that kind of nice balance is there. I think that there is a casualness to sex that gay guys tend to have that is not necessarily good for all people. It was really healthy for me
Hmm.
to be able to approach exploring my sexuality with an element of casualness, because it felt so serious and it felt so crushing and it felt so big and important. And to then be with other people that were quite respectful, but also just pretty relaxed, that allowed me to maybe kind of emulate some of that behavior. And suddenly it became a lot more easy to experiment with stuff.
Hmm.
And then I guess kind of the last note that I would put on that is my current partner. is a cis gay guy from Kentucky. We are married, we're open. I'm totally in love with him, and um, he was just like game changing for me in a lot of ways, like sexually as well. Like having the right partner that is just able to kind of see you as you like want to be seen, as you kind of deserve to be seen, and like that was like, yeah, seeing yourself through somebody else's eyes with love and with kind of the affirmation that you deserve. Like, I think that that was really game changing for me. And I really enjoy that. Like, we've been together for years and we're still kind of figuring out like new ways that we enjoy being intimate with each other, and new ways of kind of like exploring that with each other. And that's just cool and exciting
Mhm.
that I can like, kind of find new things to do with somebody that way. And also like hormones do change your body. Your body does change. My body is different now than when I started seeing him originally. And so some of that's really great. Like it's just neat to have kind of new things that are available, right? New reach, new level unlocked, if you will. But like also that can kind of come with, dare I say, like complications as well, where I'm just like, whoa, like that is now that no longer works for me because this part of me is now too sensitive, or like, is a little bit like it's experiencing sensation differently. Um, and so that's been like interesting as well. So having somebody that I can like feel comfortable to be able to speak openly to, in the moment, and like kind of before afterwards about it, and then also just like makes a big difference to see yourself through the eyes of others
Mm,
in a place of like sexiness and a light of respect, and especially in like a frame of love. I think that that like changed sex for me completely.
that's great. Going back a little bit though, what how did you figure out how did you navigate the dating scene? Because, I think for
Mhm,
a lot of trans people, there's that moment of the panic of like, when do I tell a person? When do I divulge the fact that I'm
mhm.
trans? How did you find your way through that? And what did you end up with? What was your main like practice there?
It's a really great question, and like a complicated one. I think I have this conversation with trans friends all the time, and it really is like different person by person. Especially for folks that are completely stealth, like like a lot of my like trans women friends and trans femme friends that are very stealth, and they really don't need to tell anyone because nobody would know. Um, and I think that it is both a privilege and a right to disclose or not. It is like your choice. It is your privilege. It is your right to choose to disclose when or if, and I don't necessarily have that same privilege. My genitals are the genitals I was born with. I've had top surgery, and so I can pass at the gym, and that's about. But anything lower than that, and it's pretty apparent. So I guess kind of in dating, I do not feel comfortable being stealth at all. I am like very upfront with it. It is like frankly one of the first things that will come out of my mouth if like that is the situation that we're in, because a lot of my humor and the my kind of frames of mind is almost it's like reliant on that level of transparency, because if not, then what I'm saying won't quite make sense. The jokes that I'm making, the perspectives that I'm taking, I don't think that that would make a whole lot of sense for like a cis guy to be like, oh my god, that underwire bane of my existence. You know what I mean? Like, that's not when it's not sarcastic, and so I think that there's kind of that element to it. And also like for me, I know this is not the case for all trans people. A lot of people find it really amazing and relieving and like relaxing to be stealth and to not be out. It is so exhausting for me to be stealth. I feel like it is just not correct for me. It feels so energy draining. It feels inauthentic. It feels scary. It feels like I'm like trying to like it feels like the same feeling that I had when I was like trying to fit in as a cis woman, right? And like failing miserably and like feeling like, oh my God, I'm just giving all I have to keep up this illusion. And when I'm like trying to be stealth, I feel that. And so I really try to only do it when it's like necessary for like my safety or kind of the safety of those around me. Um, as far as kind of dating, I try to be really upfront about it. Um, I I still struggle with some of that. It's more of a like shame, I think, kind of internally. If I am like at a bar, um, and I'm like lucky enough to have somebody come up to me and want to buy me a drink, and talk to me and like be interested in me. Um, I'm like I usually try to just exit that situation and not like follow up in any way. I try to like leave because I'm moreover afraid of like kind of disappointing somebody and like being um yeah, kind of that scary trans, thing that like isn't actually real, but people like, kind of think of. And I've had an easier time kind of coming out to men in kind of sexual or romantic capacities that are interested in me in person. I'll be like, I'm a trans guy. I If you're into that, great. If you're cool with that. If not, that's fine. And I just try to be kind of upfront with it so that way I don't feel like I've sunk in time,
Yeah.
or wasted their time in a way. I think there's a lot to be said about like, is that transphobic to want to date a trans person or not? I don't know. Frankly, like, sure, either argument I guess could be made. But at the end of the day, if somebody's just not interested, they're just not interested, and I'm not really. I don't want to like waste my energy on being
Or
upset about it.
or theirs,
Either way.
like, yeah, but people have
Yeah,
preferences, and they just
yeah.
accept that
People
and
are
move
just kind
on.
of allowed to want what they want. They're also allowed. I mean, for me, just kind of even being like bipan or whatever you want to call it, like it's just like sometimes it's just what you want that day. I'm like, you're lovely, but I'm like kind of looking for something specific on the menu today. That's just what I'm craving,
Yeah.
and, like, I think that that's allowed, I think that people should be allowed to have that, and so, yeah, I've had an easier time kinda saying that to men and to cis men actually than I have had with women, just because I've had more, cis women be, like, aggressively upset finding out that I am trans than I've ever had with men, which is interesting, and I think that part of that is more over homophobia than it is transphobia. Because with men, when they're looking at me and they're trying to like go be with a man, that isn't necessarily they aren't phased by this concept of like, oh, the gender is questionable, in this context. I didn't expect that. But with women that approach me, they're often straight women. And so suddenly they have to kind of like they have to have that kind of moment with themselves about like not just like, ooh, this person's trans. It's more over what it's reflecting on them
Yeah.
and the fact that like they have to kind of confront if that feels heterosexual enough for their identity or not. And um I'm queer, and so I think that if anybody sleeps with me, it is queer. I think that that can apply to like trans people in straight relationships as well. I don't think that me sleeping with a like like a trans man sleeping with a woman is just necessarily inherently queer. I think that it really just is based off of that those people and their identities and what they're seeking for in the other person. But yeah, I'm a little bit more wary about doing it with women because about like kind of coming out to women in that capacity, just because I know that there's that extra hurdle that they might have to confront, and I don't want to necessarily be in that moment with them. Um, yeah, because I think that that's like a vulnerable moment, and sometimes people react really strongly to it. Um, and yeah, that to me immediately puts me on edge and out of like a flirtatious headspace. And so I'd say that that's something that I'm still trying to kind of like process through and like would love to be able to do more like internal work to be okay with it. But yeah, I would just candidly, that's like where I get that's where I'm confident about it, and that's where I get spooked about it and how I
Mhm.
try to navigate it.
You mentioned that your early transition, your early part of your story was difficult. Who was the hardest person for you to come out to at that point? Who was the hardest person, the hardest conversation that you had in those early days?
Gosh, that's such a good question. There were two people that really were difficult. It was my partner at the time, um, which makes sense because that's like an intimate thing. Um, but moreover, that conversation was just difficult because I think I experienced kind of a quintessential thing, which was that, like, I was like, "Are you still gonna love me if I do this?" And their reply was, "I don't know." And I think that that is both heartbreaking and also just, like, really honest. That's just really true. And I think that when we, as trans people or otherwise, just as people grow and change, um, that is the fickleness of love. And your transness does not actually make you less lovable, but it is going to almost guaranteed change kind of your like social or intimate relationships with people because you are changing, and like that change is a good thing, right? I'm very glad that I'm not with that person anymore. They're a lovely human being, and I'm just glad that we're not there, right? So I'd say that that was a tough one because it's always scary to go into a situation where you're not sure if it's not so much that if you're lovable or not. I think that that's kind of undeniably true. Like you're going to be lovable no matter what. You're going to be lovable if you were a caterpillar on a stick. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Like you still really are going to be lovable, but can my current community hold that love for me through change? And I think that that is something that transness highlights. It's not necessarily just kind of like that's not just isolated to the trans experience of change, right?
Mm,
So I'd say my partner was the big one, and then my mom, and that one was really really hard just because she did not react positively. She is very on board now. She's like patron saint of trans men. We always have like three trans men at Christmas that my mom has just picked up off the street, basically, and it was just like, "Have you met?" And I love her for that. I love that. She is an old dog that is very committed to learning those new tricks. Uh, but at the time, she did not react positively, and it was really hard. I knew that she wouldn't react well. I kept it a secret for a long time. I was on testosterone for months before I told her,
mm,
and, um, I think the really hard part about it was that, like, she was reiterating a lot of really negative rhetoric, um, that I also could tell was coming from a place of love, and that is so hard. When someone is kind of spouting hate at you because they're scared and concerned for you because they love you. Like that was so hard to like kind of not have the support as my mom's son that I wanted and deserved because my mom was also grieving the daughter that she did not have anymore. And that's just real. Like, that is just a real piece of the process. And I wish that we actually had a little bit more, as much as obviously my mom could have handled that better. Like, that's undeniably true, right? That being said, I also wish that I was more prepared when I'd come out to realize that I was dealing with grief and not hate, because I think that would have given me a little bit more compassion and given me a little bit more of direction on how to handle it because I can look back now and see that like a lot of those hurtful things were said out of care because she was just so scared that I was going to go get murdered or that I wasn't be able to be employed or like just a lot of like pretty reasonable concerns actually. um and I took that as just hate and not actually the kind of miscommunicated or misguided form of care that it was.
mm,
And once we got to that point of being able to like I could see the intention and she could see my joy, we were able to actually process through that grief. And I think that there's a lot of parents that deserve to have grief around this. Um, and we aren't great at holding space for that because we ourselves are grieving and changing and transitioning and struggling and just trying to stay alive. And so, like, yeah, I think that, like, totally. Like, is it easy to be a parent of a trans kid? Like, as easy as it is to be a parent to any other kid. Um, is it also okay for people to grieve the loss of something as they are also gaining a new unfamiliar thing? I think that that is also appropriate, and like holding space for that has been helpful for me to repair my relationships with my family, and I'm glad for that. So, say that those were probably the two hardest ones.
okay. And then on the flip side of that, did you have anybody that supported you in a way that surprised you?
Oh, totally. Great question. Love that. Yeah, I was a whitewater raft guide for years, for gosh, like 10 years. And like it's kind of like being in a frat that are like frat dudes that just really like nature, you know? And lot of kind of just casual homophobia. It's very similar to being on like a team sport, where you just kind of hear stuff get thrown around. And so I was very anxious about coming out to them, and I wasn't actually intending to come out to them. I was intending to finish the season and move away and never have to talk to them about it at all. And I was featured on a cool thing with NPR, which is called "The Struggle to Stay." And it was about, you know, kind of people being interviewed about like their struggle to stay or leave West Virginia, which is where I'm from. And uh, they bumped my and like I was very candid in it too, as like a fresh trans guy. That was like part of the reason I was kind of selected for it. As like a trans voice in Appalachia, and it was supposed to air in November, way past after the season had, the rafting season had ended, and they bumped it up to air in the very middle of summer. And I get a call, and they're like, "Hey, so that thing that's supposed to air in 3 months, we're actually putting it out on the radio tomorrow." And I was like, "Great, we're just gonna get outed by the literally NPR." And so I like kind of convinced myself like nobody's gonna listen to it. Nobody's gonna know. Nobody knows that that will happen. Like nobody will notice. And as I like get this call and go into work that day, my manager at this rafting company runs up to me and he says, "I just heard a preview on the radio that you're going to be on NPR tomorrow, and I told everyone."
Oh, of course.
And I was like, "Cool, cool, 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 cool." So like, I have to figure this out right now. And so I made like a video coming out, and I like posted it on the internet and was like, "Cool, hear it from me before you hear it from NPR, I guess." Um, And I walked into work the next day, and it was, like, still yet one of the most, like, baffling kind of images in my memory is, like, seeing all of these, like, big, buff people that I worked with, because everybody has to be, like, tough as nails and super strong, and you're, doing physical labor 16 hours a day, and I see everybody in their gear just clock that I had arrived at work, and they just start sprinting towards me. And my immediate thought was like, "Oh, I'm about to get killed. Like I'm literally about to be beaten to death in this parking lot." And everybody just like tackle hugged me as like a group. I'm, like, almost, like, tearing up talking about it, and I was just so surprised and, like, touched that that was their response, and they were, like, very affirming in their own, like, kinda dude bro-y way as well, of just being like, "You've always been a dude, dude," like, and, very, very sweet, and, like, raft guides are a very specific breed of people, and, like, they're very, problematically loyal people as well, and, like, that was so touching to have like kind of my first really stark allies be my coworkers in that way, because they were like truly just like, if anybody gives you a hard time, like tell us and we will take care of it. And I'm just like, okay, thanks guys, easy. But I was so surprised. I was so surprised that they were as supportive as they were, and I mean, gosh, it wasn't not necessarily all of them, right? There was a few that certainly did have a problem with it, and like I didn't ask. I was just really trying to do my job. I really was just trying to kind of get through, And I remember coming in, one day, like a month later, and two of them had gotten in a really intense fight the night before, and it took a lot of digging for me to kind of find out that they were very much fighting about me, because one of them had, like, called me a name or, like, a slur or whatever, and the other one, shout out Jonathan Ford, love you, Jonathan Ford, stood up for me, and they literally got in a fist fight over it, and, like, obviously, I don't condone that behavior. I didn't want that to and I wish that John Ford did not have to get into a fist fight about me being trans, but at the same time, I was so touched. I was just so touched that, like, someone would not just say something, but would, like, really, like, go to bat for me like that. Um, yeah, and gosh, we're talking, like, this is 2015, this is 2016, like, Trump was getting elected right now, you know what I mean? Like, it was very much a sketchy time, in general. It very much was not necessarily like, trans athletes were not in the public eye. There was no support there, in the kind of that national sense, and so to
Mhm.
see that in such a dude bro field, um, both as a group and kind of on those individual levels was really touching and really surprising.
I like to jump to like just sort of the heavier topic in the transition journey here for a second. What was the most difficult part for you, both emotionally and then physically?
Of, like, transitioning in
Yeah.
general, of, like, coming out, like, um, the most difficult part, gosh, um, I really do think there was, um trying to, like, put this into words, kind of just this sense of, like, I think it was, like, unpacking these elements of your personhood that transness brings up. It's not necessarily the transness itself. It's it's kind of showing these other elements of you that could very have easily stayed buried until the day you died. But you're doing such an intense thing that requires so much introspection and kind of demands it from you, um, that they would get pulled up. And so I'd say it was a lot of the other baggage that transness kind of pulled up for me in coming out and transitioning and being like, well, now I have a six pack. Why don't I love my body yet? Why do I still hate my body? What is that? Is it not actually related to how I look? Is it related to how I feel about myself? Which is easy to say now, but in the time, that's such a difficult point to get to, and similarly of just being like, why do I not like myself? What is it about me that I don't like? What is wrong with me? Why am I like this? Like, why? And like realizing, especially after getting to a point where I enjoyed my gender, that all of these other things that I thought was maybe just because trans, actually turned out to be other stuff, and having to kind of wade through that of being like, oh wow, I've been holding on to this resentment my whole life, and that's making me act really negatively to people that I love, and I don't like that. I don't want to be that person. I don't know if I ever would have come to that if I didn't have to kind of really address it through like looking for solutions in my transness, if that makes sense. And like, I don't think I could have gotten there either had I been so still yet so deeply uncomfortable in just the day to day inhabiting of my own body.
Mm.
Um, so I'd say it was probably those things that was like the most difficult. It was certainly, actually, I take that back. The real physical, the most difficult thing that was like absolutely the most. I worked in food service forever. I was in a kitchen in Jefferson, West Virginia that had no AC in like the middle of summer, and I was binding and that, and like working a double shift in a hot kitchen with a binder on in like the sweltery heat, like with people actively misgendering you left and right. Like that was just so viscerally painful to do. It was just so exhausting. And is still, yeah, one of the things that I think about when I'm like just so deeply grateful for having had top surgery, is the physical relief of not being in a binder, the physical relief of not having to be concerned about the way my chest looks when I'm working with a client or I'm working with, I'm like actively selling a an item to somebody or I'm actively trying to have like a professional engagement. I think that there's like a social and intimate level that is still yet harder to get to with that sometimes because you want to look nice, and looking nice is kind of like subjective and it's like changes and it, might be different day to day, right? But there's a professional discomfort of like kind of that transness that I think like my transition really brought up for me.
Mm.
Um,
Well, especially when you're
and
when you
and like yeah.
you're in a situation like that where you've got the binder on and you're doing your darndest to blend in and hide that part of you, and yet you're still being misgendered. I think that that's got to be, you're sweating under this binder and it's just crazy for
Yeah,
you,
you're like,
and
"I
yet.
can't breathe, I'm sweaty, I'm disgusting." I'm going through so much physical discomfort just to try to appease whatever image you think you should be seeing, and it's not even working. Like, I just like, ugh, like, it was just yeah, that was very disheartening. And I'm very glad to, no longer work in food service. I'm very glad to no longer have things on my chest that I need to bind. I'm, very, very glad to, not necessarily be working in a customer service capacity like that anymore. Um, and so, yeah, I'd say that those were, probably some of the toughest things. And with kind of to piggyback on that, um, the to both of those things of kind of like the internal stuff that like transition brings up, as well as like that professional discomfort that dysphoria can create as well, is like moreover the idea that you should be or look a certain way. Um, I that is so hard to like walk that line of like understanding that like I desire this and I'm going to pursue it, and that is like life-saving gender affirming care, and I'm so grateful that I have it. And also, like I will give like hair as like an example. I have a lot of preconceived notions, especially from being like raised and like socialized as a girl for so long, that like my hairline is like deeply important to my attractiveness. And I've been on T for 10 years. My hairline is very much like we have a very acute widow's peak, and may lose our hair one day. Like that's just a reality. And having to kind of get comfy with that and realizing that like, oh, I'm coming with this preconceived notion that like I should have hair. Um, and maybe it makes me dysmorphic to not have hair, but it doesn't actually like make me dysphoric, if that makes sense. Where it's
Mm,
like, oh, this like I could like maybe want, to like do this or like be a little thinner or be a little what be a little fitter, but have a little more hair, whatever that looks like for you, right? Um, or less hair, right? But like I think that it's more over like trying to actually navigate like what is my preconceived notions of what I should look like to be attractive, and what actually feels like me and feels good when I'm that inhabiting that skin and then like perceived that way. And I found that like feeling like I'm in a healthy body is way more satisfying and sustainable than looking like I'm ripped. Right? I feel like I should look like I'm ripped, but I actually am like a happier, healthier person when I just know that I'm in a healthy body. Those things aren't necessarily like, like you can have both, right? But I think that it's really about like the place that you're coming from with it, especially when critiquing self or perceiving self of like what should be there, based off of like kind of these other preconceived notions versus like what feels good for me to see on my body when it's actually there,
mhm.
you know? Yeah, and that's really tough. That's really like sticky shades of gray to be navigating when you're dealing with like concepts of gender and then your actual kind of like expression of gender that feels good.
Yeah. So how far along would you say you are in your process of self-actualization, of getting to that, whatever it is, ideal version of yourself that you had maybe setting out when you were starting your transition?
Yeah, it's so interesting to ask this. I just got to celebrate like my 10 years on testosterone, and I'm now 8 years post-op as well of my double mastectomy. And I don't really think that I want anything. Like I don't think that I want, bottom surgery. I'm not necessarily ruling it out, but it's not really a desire that I've had. And I don't think that there's any like kind of further. I used to really look at the like top surgery as like kind of like, ooh, once I get that, man, like that's it, and like in some ways I was correct. Like that was really the last thing that I kind of wanted. And I'm so glad I got it. And I feel like kind of since then, I was like, cool, that was it. Like now I am me. I am like I'm very happy to still be on testosterone. It's not necessarily something that I would like to. I know a lot of people don't want to be on like a hormone therapy for the rest of their life. Totally respect that. I am so cool with being on testosterone for the rest of my life. I would like put like I will like be on my way to like the casket and be like, "Do you have my testosterone back?" Like, like I am so happy to be on it for the rest of my life if I can be, and if my health allows me to be, because like I really do feel like kind of mentally it does a lot for me, almost more than just like physically. Sure, there's stuff about my body I wish I could change. I wish I had a six pack. I wish I had a beard. I don't think I'm ever gonna really. I have like some scruff, but I'm blonde, and so it doesn't really matter how much of a beard I grow. It just kind of looks like a thought bubble clinging to my face, and I just have to get okay with that. Like that's just kind of what it is. And I'm still so grateful for like the facial hair that I do have, and I am very grateful for like the voice, that I've kind of gotten from testosterone, and the kind of vocal range change that I've gotten. So I'd say, all that to say, if like how far along am I? I would say, I'm about like 10 years on of kind of like medically transitioning, about 12 years or so of kind of starting the social transition process. Um, I think that I've known, if you will, that like I was trans from a very, very early age. So that feels a little bit like a different kind of timeline. Um, but yeah, I would say that those are probably the milestones for me. And yeah, I don't know. Now I'm just kind of happy. It's interesting how like when gender shifts, our standards of self shift as well. Where like now I'm like in some ways a lot less critical of myself physically than I used to be, just because I'm like kind of passing, and I like the way that I like feeling like, oh, I like look like a guy, and I like feel like a guy, and like because of that, suddenly I'm like, the thought of being kind of an old bald man, not actually that unappealing. That's fine. I could get down with that. And that would be okay. Whereas like I think that previously the concept of like even smaller minutia around like aging was really scary and upsetting, and something I would want to change.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
I
a
think the only other maybe like gender affirming procedure I would ever maybe get is a hair transplant, but even then, I'm just like, oh gosh, that sounds like a lot. And I still have hair, so it's like we're certainly not there. But like, yeah, that would probably be one of them. Yeah.
yeah, and I just think oh, my sick brain isn't working very well. What was I gonna jump in on there? Oh, a lot of the folks, especially that watch this show and get a lot out of it, are looking to transition, are early in their transition. And I think,
Mhm.
one of those things that was early for me in trying to accept and come to grips with the fact that I was trans and really believe it, and move forward with confidence through it without second guessing
Mhm.
myself too much, was the thought of growing old as a man and how gross that felt in my brain versus growing old as a woman. That was an odd one to come across, to just be another uh, point of realization that no, this is really the path for me.
It was totally the thing that actually got me over the hurdle, if you will, of like kind of making my medical transition happen, was that exact feeling, because I um I really was debating whether or not to go on testosterone and to like kind of really like commit to this in a way, or if I could kind of wade that non-binary line forever, which not accurate, right? But like it wasn't making me happy either. Wasn't really doing it for me. And um I had this nightmare, and it's so funny, like saying it out loud, it sounds comical because, like, it is, but, like, it felt like a nightmare, like, it was, I was in a panic, like, I had a dream that I was like a blonde 35-year-old mom and I had 2 kids crawling all over my body and going like, "Mommy, mom." And I had a dude, like this like nice husband with a briefcase come home who's like, "Honey, I'm home." And I like woke up and I was like, like, like in a cold sweat. And literally that morning I made the call to Women Walker Clinic in DC and I like literally got the appointment to go get testosterone. I was like, no, I can't, because I was so scared about the unfamiliar, and all that entailed. Like, is it worth it? Is this gonna make me happy? Am I gonna regret this? Right? I was really scared about it, and realizing that I was so much more afraid of staying the same
Mm.
than I was of change and all the uncertainty that that brought. And that really helped get me over the hurdle of like the fear that was in my way of kind of pursuing a life that has made me very happy.
Hmm.
So yeah, no, I'd say that the age thing is a real good one to be like, can you imagine aging gracefully in either of these capacities? And maybe that's giving you a hint.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we sort of wrap this portion up here, I like to close with three really kind of fun and deep questions. What is there anything that you feel you've been able to accomplish because of the fact that you're trans?
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot, but certainly the most palpable one right now is the Here to Be tour, which is like an all trans comedy tour, right? And both the tour itself and I think kind of the actualization of that, of getting to um, accomplish the amount of travel and meet the amount of people that I've been able to meet, and um, be able to kind of bring a little bit of hope. I think to some folks. I think that that is like a real accomplishment that I'm really proud of, and the only reason I've been able to do that is because of my transness and is because of the trans community. And that seems really, that to me, I'm just like, man, that's like real. That real has really felt like a purpose. It's like been a real motivating thing for me, and I think that a lot of the education and the conversations that I've been able to have, and yeah, I'd say that a lot of my success is actually because of my transness and like my transition, and not just because of like DEI industry or whatever, but like moreover because of the perspective that I think transitioning has brought me, and the community that it's brought me, and also just the confidence to believe that I could do something. Like, it's like the people that are like Olympians also have to believe that they can be
Mm.
one day, right?
Yeah.
And I think that transitioning kind of inherently gives you a sense of like, you really can do that. You really can choose this and make a big change. Like, you can just decide up and decide one day, like, I'm going to be an opera singer, and like just work your ass off and do it. And like I think that like transitioning, which feels like such an impossible feat
Yeah.
at the start, of being like, can I just literally change my entire life? The answer is yes, and you can do it joyfully too. And I think that that is like a, a real accomplishment as well. So yeah, I think that I like a whole lot.
That the end of that sounds sort of like the answer to this next question. So if that is, then we can move on. But let me know if you got something else. What is your favorite thing that you've learned about yourself or the world around you through this journey?
Mm, um, I have learned that there's just way more love in the world than I ever thought like possible. And I am capable of holding so much more love in my heart than I ever thought possible for like way more people and way more deep capacities. And that has really helped me like better learn how to love myself. Like learning how to love myself has helped me love other people, and loving other people has helped me learn how to love myself. And in a world that I thought was very fraught with just fear and hate at the beginning of this transition, I now realize is just a world that is yet like waiting to alchemize that into a place of like love and understanding
Mm.
and compassion. I really do think that it's like capable of getting there for all of us. I really do think that like all of us have the capacity to love deeply. And it's moreover like, are you in an environment where it's safe to do that? Are you in an environment where it's conducive or advantageous to do that? And if the answer is like no, then like suddenly I feel like I'm able to have a little bit more compassion for folks that I used to be a lot more critical and hateful towards, because now I can see that like, wow, you might just not be actually given the opportunities or the resources to express the love that I know that you can as like a human.
Mm.
And so yeah, I'd say that I really do think that the world is a lot more loving of a place, and it's a lot easier to see that when I'm not busy trying to tear myself apart.
And finally, what advice do you have to pass on to young or closeted trans folks out there?
Um, it is okay to be in the closet, but also um, the people that are looking for you, that are just like desperately looking for you, can't find you until you're kind of honest, and authentic, and like expressing that in a way that is true. Um, I don't think everyone needs to be out in a very extreme way. I don't think that that's necessarily necessary, and I think that there's a lot of empowerment to be found in, if you authentically feel that being stealth is ideal, or being closeted is just what needs to be, for you right now, and that is okay. So without placing shame on that, I also would just say like, never would have met the love of my life if I was still just pretending to be a cis woman. I never would have met my best friends that I've ever had in the whole world if I was pretending to be someone that I'm not. And they wouldn't be able to love me as thoroughly or as well as they have without me giving them that opportunity to see me. And so there are people out there, they are looking for you, and they can't find you if you're not giving them the opportunity to. And so I would just kind of encourage younger folks, closeted trans folks, like, your brain is lying to you. You are very lovable. In fact, you are almost more lovable the more true to yourself that you are. And giving other people the ability to find you, that need you, um, that's worth it. It's worth facing the risk. It's worth approaching and confronting the fear, in order to find those amazing people, and to kind of find the love that's like in you, that like really wants to come out.
Well, Ren Q Daw, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. Y'all, you can find him at Ren Q Comedy pretty much everywhere. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for this. This was wonderful. And also just like, thank you for holding this space for the community.
Absolutely. All right. That is it for our edit for the that portion of the show. We're going to take a break, come back, and talk more about comedy. We've got about another hour left, so stay tuned. We'll be back in a little bit. What advice do you have to pass on to young or closeted trans people out there?
And this is probably cliche to death, but I have to say that you have to do what's right for you at a time that's right for you. No one else can make that decision for you, and no one else can push you into something that you're not ready for. You can't live your life to make everyone else happy all the time, because if you try and do that, you're going to fail. You're never going to make everyone happy.
I think getting a support network and at least telling a few close friends is huge. It's so huge, because those feelings of being alone and not being seen be really devastating. having the support of a couple of really close friends or family members or whoever you trust is just absolutely huge.
Just find anybody to talk to that you can about this. If you feel like you're trans or you might be trans, or just find somebody you can confide in.
Having a group of friends, no matter how small, or somebody that can back you up and lift you up during it will mean the world. Because at first, everybody is scared. The more you go out, the more you build your confidence in yourself, the less it'll affect you. Everybody feels it and will continue to feel it. And it's just whether or not you let it overtake you and control you, or you let it go past.
Almost every relationship has grown deeper as a result of sharing this deeper part of myself. So I think there's something to finding your community to get to expand with and reinforce, but I think it then amplifies into almost every other relationship you can have.
I think that there's a struggle to transition the right way. Everyone's going to transition on a different timeline, in different order of operations, and as long as it happens how they want it to happen, that's a valid transition. And not transition is valid.
I do struggle with this. I should follow my own advice. Don't focus on like regretting things, like not ever, like not starting early enough or anything like that, because then you'll just go through a loop and just constantly think about it, and it's not something you can change.
I didn't take anything for granted. Every positive change, even most of the time, I swear it was just a placebo where I noticed some growth in places that I wanted growth, or I would notice like really subtle things. I swear every single day for that first year. And those are I looked at the victories more than I looked at anything else. And I think that's super important during the first year.
So much of transitioning is was just waiting on something. You know, waiting for things to happen in your body, waiting for things to happen in your brain, waiting for surgeries, waiting for name changes. Be patient, because what's waiting for you at the end is so worth everything that you felt, all the hurt that you felt, all the anguish that you felt, all the anxiety. It just makes everything so much better. I can't describe the feeling of waking up and getting to be me, this person that I've wanted to be my entire life, this person that I've known I was my entire life. It just makes everything so worth it.
I would go back and say, look, you're going to go through a lot of crap and it's going to be hard, but it's going to make you a better person to go through it, and you'll be fine. Just know you'll be fine. Like, that's the main point they want to make.
You have to be you. You can't hide who you are. You have to be you. And I know that it's going to be scary and you're going to get bullied a lot. So be you, but do it in a safe way. Like, don't ever put yourself in danger. But also, don't cower down because it's going to be hard. Because life is hard.
It is scary, but hopefully it's worth it. And most of the time it is worth it to truly be you, whatever form that looks like. You know, I've always been happy, but I didn't know, and I didn't know peace and joy the way that I know it now. And it was a bit of a struggle at first, but I would do it a million times over. And one of the things that I say often in my lives is, do it scared. Yeah, it's scary. Then do it scared.
Whatever you choose to do, whether it's come out or not come out, transition or not transition, start hormones, have surgery, any and all of it, is whatever you do, do it for you. Do it for you and you alone. Don't do it for anybody else. Don't do it because your friends are doing it, or don't not do it because your parents said no, or whatever you do it for you. Because in the end, the person you're most accountable to in this life is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you're comfortable with, like even if you're trans and you know it, but you're legitimately fine with not doing anything about it, do that for you, and that's okay. There's no wrong way to be trans. Just be you. The only person you're ever answerable to at the end of the life is yourself.
Your journey is your own. No one can tell you how to transition. No one can tell you what it's supposed to look like, because we're all different.
I had moments coming out that I did it on other people's timeline because they asked me to, and were I to do it again, I wouldn't do that. It's something that's very personal. Either you might not want to come out, or you might want to come out, and people are stopping you. And I think it's a very personal thing, and so making sure that's on your timeline is important.
You need to always ask questions about who are you, and is that really you, or is that something that has been manufactured for you and you have just latched your identity to that?
Love yourself. Love who you know that you truly are. And when you do, you will inspire and compel other people to love you as well.
Give yourself room, imagine yourself as that seed, and that all the energy, all the life, all the creativity, all that you could ever imagine is already there. It's already inside of that seed, and all the nourishment is already up inside of that seed. Mm-hmm. Now, the soil you choose to plant yourself in, all right, the sun that you choose to receive, how many times you choose to water yourself, who you let water you, that is totally up to you, and you have autonomy no matter what situation you're in, right? Know that how you choose to love yourself in your mind and your sacred space is the most important, and no one can take that away from you, even if you have to fake it until you make it for right now.
Constantly remind yourself that you're valid, you're gonna be okay, and it doesn't matter what anybody else says. It's your life, and you only get one. Being that you only have the one, wouldn't you rather have lived it to the best of your abilities and as yourself, with a modicum, hopefully, of happiness?
You don't have to do this alone, but if you feel like it's something that you need to do, then do it. There's people that will be here to catch you.
There are a lot of us out there. We are everywhere. And so you are not alone.
All right. Oh, I think we nailed it right at the end of the video. That's perfect. I think that's right at like 8 minutes and 25 seconds or something, whatever. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Transgender Show. I'm going to hit start recording here to make sure I've got it going on my end. Let's bring our guest, Ren, back in. Hi, Ren.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much again for coming on the show and hanging out and jumping into the second portion. This is where we'll get to plug all the great things that you're working on and talk about comedy and any of the other things that you want to talk about, your advocacy and activism, things like that. Let's see, where do I want to start? Do you have a specific place you want to start? Anything you want to start with?
Gosh, I mean, I guess, I'll just kind of give like a quick overview of like what we're doing.
Yeah, what are you doing?
In case you have not heard the word on the street, me literally screaming from rooftops for a year and a half about this project. The Here to Be tour is an all trans comedy protest tour. We're going to all 50 states. We are highlighting lineups of all trans folks, gender nonconforming folks, non-binary folks, and a lot of like kind of like drag artists as well. So kind of anybody that is affected by like anti, gender diversity like legislation. And this is the first time that we've ever heard of a queer person actually performing in all 50 states. We don't have any documented out person that has done it, and certainly nobody that's done it for charity. And that's a big part of the show, is that every show we partner with a local nonprofit that's doing, work for the LGBTQ community, usually kind of direct service work for the trans community, or legislative and advocacy work on kind of the statewide level. And we donate 50% of our proceeds to those organizations to try to kind of give back to the community, especially during a time that a lot of their funding is actively being slashed, since we've cut pretty much all DEI federal funds, as well as a lot of kind of direct service aid funds that a lot of those organizations rely on as well federally. So it is a big old project. It has been a huge labor of love. It's very much like a historic tour in a lot of ways, and we've faced a lot of struggles, if you will, of just like censorship and not being able to kind of promote online. But even with that, we've been selling out shows all over the country. We've featured over 100 queer and trans performers, and we've raised almost $30,000 for LGBTQ nonprofits. So yeah, that's like kind of the overview of what we've been doing. And we are in our final 10 states. We just hit our 42nd state yesterday in Texas, and we are heading to Alabama here in 2 days. And we're knocking off kind of the last 8 states in the South, and then we fly to Alaska and Hawaii, and that makes all 50.
Wow. And you've already raised over $30,000. How does that feel as someone that has been doing comedy for a while to be raising that much money with comedy? It seems like it's a struggle out there to make any kind of money with this.
Yeah, comedy is not a industry you should be in for money, right? Like because you won't make any. But I think that it's been really exciting to know that that's possible. We still pay our performers, so that's been like kind of a cool part of this too, is that we still compensate all of our talent, as well as like try to kind of raise this money for nonprofits. I am the only volunteer of the show, so I kind of like do the organizing and like the promoting and performing, and I wanted to do that out of a place of service to the community and for our country, and I'm like glad for that. And that's kind of made a lot of that like fundraising element possible. But also it's just been really, it's both heartbreaking and heartwarming to see how little can go so far, as well, because like both for us as like kind of like performers, right, and just kind of like making it work and being able to be like, well, I have $400 for housing for a month, and so I guess I'm gonna like sleep in my car. And a lot of people like then kind of jump in and they're just like, oh, like we'll put you up and like make sure you have food, and like just it's been very, very community oriented, and it's been a real blessing. And then also with the nonprofits doing this work, gosh, like we had a lot of shows that are like it's not necessarily a huge turnout, and we're usually able to donate maybe a couple $100, but that's not a whole lot, and in like the scheme of things, like $300 is only $300, right? And I remember this one show we had in Columbia, South Carolina, and we partnered with the Harriet Hatchett Center, and a wonderful organization. They're doing so much for the community, and they like wept afterwards when we like told them how much we could give them, which was $300 basically, and in like tears of joy, to just be like, you have no idea how much that'll like I'm literally I'm such a crier. I like literally tear up talking about it, because like it's just so real, like how much that they're like kind of doing for the community off of so little, off of just a shoestring budget. I mean, they're doing clothing exchanges, they're doing like food security stuff, they have pro bono lawyers that help people kind of navigate their paperwork as far as like gender marker changes or name changes. They have support groups, they have like community events, they do protests, they do advocacy and stuff. It's a lot of mutual aid. And the fact that like $300 made like such a difference to them as like a donation when they're doing all of that work, like just it really made me quite motivated to do this in like a volunteer capacity, and to do this in a place of service. And yeah, and so it's like, it's interesting, right? I'm like shocked that we've been able to raise that much money. I'm shocked that we've had over like 3,000 attendees see this show, which has been amazing. Like, what a dream come true, right? And then also it's like kind of disheartening, because like, God, Chapel Roan can blink and donate $3 million like it's nothing. Name any pop star that that's in the public eye that is actively in support of queer people, or is like actively standing up for like their their community and marginalized groups in America. And like, what are you doing? I am nobody, and I am able to like pull together every ounce of like wherewithal, and like every contact I have, and like every everything, like, and like am able to raise like tens of thousands of dollars, right? And like one show and still pull a massive profit. And so it makes me a lot more like, in some ways, kind of judgmental. It's like, as much as it is like disheartening to be like, well, Chapel Roan could do that, but like, I can't wait for Chapel Roan to do that. I have like, we can't wait for kind of these people in power, in positions of power, whether they're, you know, people that we admire or people that we despise, you know, we can't wait for them to make the change. Like, we have to do it. Right. And also, a lot of our attendees probably couldn't have afforded to go to a Chapel Roan concert in the first place. You know, like, they can't afford a lot of that anyway. And so I think that that's been a part of it. So it's like, it's both like a point of pride, and has also kind of made me look at kind of art and activism a little bit differently, in that, like, this was a tremendous amount of labor and we had very few resources to do it, and we pulled it off. And if that's the case, then what are all these people with all these resources doing?
Yeah.
And, you know, what, like, how can we better encourage our artists and our icons to bring positive change?
Well, I think a good way to do it is leading by example, right? You show them how to do it. So
That's certainly the hope, right? But also, it's been really cool to like kind of see how artistically folks are navigating this climate, right? We've featured a tremendous amount of, you know, like literally like over 100 trans and like genderqueer performers all over the country. And couple things on that. First of all, gosh, we really are everywhere. We really are in every nook and corner and cranny in this country, and I love that. That is very heartening to me. And also, we're doing great work. People are really metabolizing the traumas that our community are going through in really innovative ways. Really, really brilliant ways, both in like kind of comedy, in drag, in burlesque, in poetry, in song. We had like musicians, you know, on this show that are like, you know, cool like rock bands in like Atlanta, and like, you know, we had like, gosh, I mean, places that, you know, a lot of folks would be like, oh, aren't you scared to go to those southern states? Aren't you scared to go to that red state? You know, and I would say honestly, one of the only states I was really scared to go to was Wyoming. And we were in Casper, Wyoming, and I remember it was like early on. It was like one of our first shows too, and we pulled up, and I remember seeing our like drag artist walking down. Like, here I am, like a white guy shaking in my boots about being here and being trans, and like down the road comes like this like full beat face drag queen in a big fur with a nice, like, you know, got a massive boa, just like looking incredible, you know, so overtly queer. And it was just like a regular Tuesday for them, you know. They were just kind of like walking down, they were like ready to go. And like downtown Casper, and I was just like, wow, we really are everywhere, you know, and we are just kind of living outwardly and authentically everywhere too. And that gave me the courage as well of like kind of this element of like, we belong here, you know, we were like, we belong everywhere we go. And trying to ban people from public spaces is moreover to kind of, I believe, like keep us fighting and keep us thinking that we don't belong, and that we need to be small and we need to be quiet. And I am very grateful to see that we are in some ways doing the exact opposite, and being quite loud and being very present and very visible. And that is both like an act of courage, and I also think that it is like a life-saving thing for people as well, to see themselves in others and see those people presenting unabashedly and without shame, and in just cool, unique ways, you know? And so I think that that's been like a really cool takeaway, is like, gosh, we really are everywhere and we're doing such cool shit. I love that about us.
So, how many people are on the tour with you versus how many people that you have there on location, essentially, that you pick up in the local area?
It's just me. I'm the only through line of all 50. We've had people come on for kind of regional segments, which has been great. I love the company, right? I really do. And so we'll have like, we had like some great like New York people, like I mentioned Bailey Pope earlier. We had like Ellis Durand and like a couple, folks in kind of New York pop on for like New England shows. And they like, hopped around to kind of like Vermont and Connecticut and Maine. And, we had really great my Midwest crew. God, I love my like kind of Midwest regulars. We had Talia Clay and Ray Tang and like Quinn James as well. They're like all Chicago comics. And so they came on a bunch of kind of the Midwest stops around that area and to kind of like Indianapolis and, kind of like, Iowa, Omaha, we're thinking kind of like Dakotas to kind of Detroit, and they were just loved working with them, really, really enjoyed kind of getting to spend time with them. And so it's neat to have kind of like our regional people that like hop on for a little bit and then they kind of like hop back off, and been very grateful for most of our kind of West Coast lineups were Portland folks, Carlos Kareem Wyndham, who's a deeply talented storyteller, Mix Dahlia Bell, who was on Hannah Gatsby's Gender Agenda, Joe John Sanchez the third, who's a wonderful like performer and entertainer and teacher as well. And they're all kind of Portland based, and they hopped on pretty much all the West Coast shows, and love and miss them dearly as well. And so we'll have kind of like groups, but they kind of stay in their like region usually. And then I think that as much as we can, we try to highlight local acts, both out of an element of convenience of just being like, we will come to you, as well as also just like, I think that giving people those opportunities is really important. I've been shocked at like the folks that are kind of in the middle of nowhere that are doing this work, that are like doing in this niche and are great at it. Really, really cool. Right. And like, surprising, and that's been lovely. And so I think that keeping that space for local performers is as much a convenience factor as it is kind of a like an ethical like pillar in some ways for us as well. It's been like really cool to get to see some of these, like gosh, Elliot Thursday was one. Like he was just incredible out of nowhere, just kind of in the Dakotas, like really, really fun. Pallaway, oh my god, Pallaway, the next Dochi, like absolutely. She's just a phenomenal artist out of Philly who's doing a lot of really cool hip hop work and is just such a delight and is just a absolutely natural performer and is just so dedicated to their craft and is like doing really cool relevant stuff. Was so cool to get to work with her. And yeah, she's kind of based in like, like Philly area and like just out of nowhere, and like I also, especially with Pallaway, like I didn't know this when I booked her because I was like, you're such a pro. I'm so excited to have you on the show. And in our first show in like Wilmington, Delaware together, or no, it was New Jersey. We had a New Jersey show together first. And she tells me that it was her first paid gig ever. And like, here's this person who's just like killing it, like crushing it. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I was like, are you kidding? And they were like, I was afraid to like tell you that up front because I was worried you wouldn't want to book me. And I was just like, oh my God, no, I'm like so honored that this was like the first thing that you got to do. And like, what a cool feeling as like a trans person who is like deeply indebted to other people for taking a chance on me, when I first started to give me some stage time. And it felt really neat to kind of get to like pass that on to like some other folks that I see as just so deeply worthy of it. So yeah, I'm the only through line. We try to do locals every stop, and then we have kind of like regional folks that'll like maybe hop on for a little bit, and then we get to kind of like trans bandwagon together for a while, which is always cute too.
Yeah, so somebody was looking for a joke in the chat, and so I wanted to ask this, like, what's a joke that's been hitting well for you throughout the country in a way that was like maybe you weren't expecting, like one that's like, oh, that one's hitting. Okay, cool.
When I wrote this joke, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to tell this in front of certain crowds. And I am shocked that this joke has yet to not land, like knock on wood, right? But like, it's like, I'm shocked that it has worked kind of everywhere, which is really about pubic hair. And I tried to, explain this is based on a real thing that happened right before I went out on, like, I think the second leg of the tour, which was I really needed a trim. And downstairs, we were feeling pretty bushy, and testosterone, very prolific ass hair. It abounds. It is present. It can clog a Roomba. It's just a lot. And I got a really nice pair of trimmers, and I'm used to like gendered trimmers, which are like, you kind of have girly trimmers that are kind of like pink and useless, and then you kind of have dude trimmers that are like Fisher Price toys, right? And and I didn't get either of those. I got like a really good pair of like the non-denominational trimmers, right? And they're really expensive, and they like pair with Bluetooth, and I was really stoked to use them. So I go in full bush, and I'm like, here we go, and I go, and then I'm like, oh my god, that was a mistake. Okay, now I have to fix the mistake that I just made because I like trimmed too close to, I flew too close to the sun, right? And so then I'm like trying to fix it, and I'm like doing too much. You're doing a little like fade on your thighs because where does it begin? Where does it end? I don't know. And eventually I like look in the mirror and I just go, oh my god, I just gave my vagina a Hitler mustache. And obviously I was going to take it off because we can't be walking around with like a clit Hitler, if you will. So we were going to take it off, right? And then I was like, maybe we keep it. Just for a little while, maybe we keep it, just in case they start doing like genital inspections on trans people, right? Because then they'll drop my trousers and they'll just be like, I don't know, maybe he's an ally, And I call it the Clitler bit, and the Clitler bit like really works for like everyone. Really, I'm like shocked that like people love that joke as much as they do. But I do love to tell it, and it's just a real one. Like it's just like a real joke that was like born out of truth in some ways, and it just feels so ridiculous. And like, yeah, I'd say that's the surprise joke of this tour in some ways to me.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising, and also surprisingly topical at the same time.
Indeed.
Yeah. So what was it that got you to comedy? You mentioned some of the jobs that you've done in the past. Like, what got you into doing comedy?
Theater kid background, very classic queer in theater pipeline. Loved it. I really did. And like I stopped acting when I came out, essentially, because I didn't want to. I was already really struggling with getting misgendered all the time, and I just didn't want to give people more opportunities to do that, especially because I was like really struggling in being cast in women's roles all the time, and that feeling uncomfortable. And so I went into writing and direction, which I loved. And then I moved away from West Virginia. I moved away from my community that I had to kind of do a lot of that creative work. And I tried to grow up and get a real job and say, I was just like, well, all those dreams of being like an actor or a movie star. I'm just like, grow up, kid. That's never going to happen, And I really tried. And, just kind of couldn't let it go, and I was really miserable. And I desperately wanted to do some sort of performance thing. I like had the itch for it, and I was a big comedy fan. I had never considered myself like for it. I never thought I could do it myself, but I loved stand up and grew up on Whose Line Is It Anyway and MASH, and so grew up on really great comedy classics, and like was a big Dave Chappelle fan, frankly. I loved his specials. I thought he was such a brilliant writer. And then like it was kind of back to back. Like he just started coming out with really aggressive and negative content about trans people. And it wasn't that creative. And that was really the thing that bugged me more than anything, more than it being rude, more than it being offensive, more than it not making me feel good as a human being. I was like, I admired this person. So I had like put this guy on a pedestal, and just really let me down. you know? And like, I just felt like my life is so ridiculous. Like every day, my life is ridiculous. Like, I'm sure you have plenty of a crazy story of like, this person said this crazy thing, or like this prosthetic fell out of my blah, 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 or like, you know, like whatever, right? And we all have these stories. And like the fact that this brilliant man could not find a single like funny thing in the ridiculousness of my like lived experiences was just so like disappointing. And I was like, I could write a better trans joke than that. And like, as brash and like insane and brazen and like egotistical as it is to be like, I could write a better joke than Dave Chappelle. You know, I'm glad that I tried. And I went to a little smoky pub in Atlanta, Georgia while I was like living out of my car for a little bit. And I tried out this joke, and genuinely I thought that I was going to get shot in the parking lot afterwards, because there was just so many mean dudes there that were being really cruel in their jokes towards women, and toward like trans people was just the topic of the hour. Like it just was like everybody was doing this content, and nobody knew I was trans either. Like I was very passing, and I just was kind of waiting my turn, you know. And like, and so then I go up and I do my set, and people really liked it. People really seemed to enjoy it, which I was surprised by. And the whole vibe of the room shifted. And so instead of making jokes about how like great it would be to go assault a trans person in the parking lot, it became like kind of this almost like we were finding ways to joke together. And the dude that went up after me, because I had a bit about a Packer, and he went up after me and he was just like, yo man, like I gotta ask, like, do you have like a Sears catalog where it's like circumcised, uncircumcised? And I'm like, actually, yes. And they thought that was very amusing, and I thought it was really amusing too, because it was true. And it didn't like the joke wasn't on like, well, you're a freak and deserve to die. The joke was just like, man, isn't he being a human crazy? You know, like, isn't that wild? Like, and that's pretty benign, you know, in comparison to jokes that center hate speech and slurs and violence.
Yeah.
And so that was really remarkable that like, even just in my first, like I wasn't good yet. I wasn't funny yet. I wasn't, you know, like I was just super fresh. I was just like, you know, it was 3 to 5 minutes of kind of stuff. And to have that big of an impact, even with bad comedy, you know, like even at my earliest, at my worst in some ways, like to still yet have that kind of impact on a room. And on the comedians and how they were engaging with the topic. And that really hit me. And like, I'll never forget it. It's a memory that I hold so dear to my heart. After my first set, after that open mic, I had this cute little dude come up to me afterwards, and he shook my hand, and he was just like, oh my God, that was incredible. How long have you been doing this? And I said, not long. First mic ever. And he's just shaking my hand, and he was just like, man, like, wow, like I would love to put you on a show if you're in town in a month. And like I wasn't. So I, you know, like I turned down that gig, and he just said, oh, what a bummer, man. You're going places.
And you proved him right. Yeah. You're going all the places.
I was gonna say, yeah, and it feels really nice to have proved him right. And like what an honor to have that be true. And like those little comments of encouragement are really the world for like performers overall, for artists overall, but especially for comedians, right? Like that feedback is like, so I mean, like it really saves lives. Like comedians are more suicidal than any other group I know. And those little comments save lives. And so getting that in kind of my first moment of trying it on for size, it like really stuck with me, and it really meant a lot to me. And like I wish I knew who that dude was. I wish I had his name. I wish I could go back and thank him, but like I don't know anything about him. I just know that he was there that one night and really made an impact on me. And yeah, that's kind of like how I got into it. And I just kind of kept going from there, and really tried to go out to mics and shows like every single week, and was you know, really tried to do it as kind of like an exercise, like going to the gym and getting stronger. And I just fell in love with it. And so now even like the grind of like a, you know, shitty smoky pub late at night and there's nobody there, and like I kind of love that. I kind of love it. It's kind of like lifting a heavy weight and feeling like oh, I just did that, like I just like did that move I always wanted to do, and like that's now what it's felt like. And so I think that like falling in love with the process as much as the product is the best advice that I've ever kind of received as far as like getting into comedy and staying with it. And I think that's probably true about almost any craft, is like if you can figure out a way to fall in love with the process of it, even like the annoying, frustrating, difficult parts of it, that is kind of the key to success in it, because that's going to keep you the most like resilient.
The political environment has shifted significantly. It seemed, it's just ramped up to this ridiculous level. They spent billions of dollars on anti-trans ads. Texas, I think you said, had because you do little like news segments in under 30 seconds. Texas has put forth over 145 anti-trans bills this year. How have you actually found the country? And I feel like you've kind of answered this question, but like, how have you found it as you've gotten out there? Is it just sort of one of those things that I've sort of believed, which is it's easy for people to say that sort of stuff, but when they're when they're face to face with you, when they're faced with you, it's much more difficult to be that bigoted and that anti-trans. Is that kind of what you found?
Yeah, totally. I'd say that and also like I have just been shocked at how receptive people are. I really thought there was going to be more resistance. We had one protester. It was in New Hampshire, and her name was Beth, and she was great. She was so nice, and I had a really good conversation with her. And I did not expect to like her as much as I did, or be as friendly, with each other as we were. And I keep seeing that happen.
How did
We had
that how did that conversation happen? How did
You
you get into the conversation with the protester?
Well, she was just there, and she's just at this venue, and like I'm like setting up the show, so I'm like taking the gear out of my car, and I was annoyed that she was there, and I kind of had my walls up at first, and she had this sign that said, "Why are so many girls getting double mastectomies?" and with like a QR code, and I was just talking to her, and I just was trying to find any common denominator. What can I find? And like the first one was like, well, it's cold outside, and she's out here alone, and she's like an old lady. She's like easily like 60 plus, and so that kind of softened me to her just a little. Even I know that's so silly, but just like the concept of like, oh, it's cold out here. Even if you're out there being a dick, it doesn't matter. Like it's still cold, and I can connect on that. Like we're both cold right now together at the same time. And that is one thread, right, that I can go off of. So I started talking about like, are you from here? Cool. Oh, you're an empty nester. Oh wow. How old are your kiddos? Where are they? Do you miss them? Yeah, I believe it. What, you stayed in the area? What do you like about it? Oh, you love the arts. Well, we certainly have that in common. Wow. Like, okay, like, just kind of these little bits and pieces. And I didn't really like, I didn't try to approach it head on with her about being like, why do you hate trans people? That's not really the move, right? But I think we were both curious about the other one. And so I tried to kind of make a little joke about it. And I said, why are so many girls getting double mastectomies? I just don't find that to be true. All the girls I know are getting boob jobs, and my double mastectomy went great. And she just was kind of, I think, caught off guard by that and just kind of chuckled. And I think it was amusing to her. And we didn't really talk about it like further, but I tried to just be like, we're doing a show. If you want to come inside, it's cold out here, and it's a pretty funny show. And she was like, thank you. Like I could tell that she appreciated like the offer to be like welcomed in the space. And as we were like having this conversation, like I'm unpacking my car to get the gear inside to do the show that she is actively protesting, and she like kind of in this like almost like instinctual like automatic way was like oh, like she like had a moment where she's like, oh, can I like help you, and like was like helping me like pull a cord out of like the storage on topper on my car. And so suddenly she's like helping me, you know what I mean? And so it was just like these kind of little moments, and like I don't know, that just really impacted me. And she stayed outside for pretty much the whole show, but she stayed by the door. She just kind of listened, and then she left about 10 minutes into my set and followed me on Instagram afterwards. And it sent me a little message saying like, you were such a lovely young man, it was great to meet you. And like it's just not what I would have expected, you know what I mean? Like I really was like a different experience. And like similarly, we had in Vermont, we had a Republican like representative of the House, like Republican House rep, come to the show, and he didn't even know that he's just a comedy fan, and we were at a comedy club, and so he was just like, this is my regular Saturday activity or whatever, and he stayed for the whole show. He laughed. He was a great sense of humor, and came up to me afterwards and just was really sincere about like, what can we do across the aisle to like better protect our trans neighbors? Like, this was so good. This was so funny. Like, I'm so annoyed at the way this country is turning. Like, I'm a veteran, I'm a Republican for these reasons. And I just hate that we're focusing on this to tear people down instead of try to like lift people up. And, working so hard on the other side of the aisle too, to kind of keep pushing the fulcrum back over, to the center a little bit. And like, that really was impactful to me too. And so I think that what I have found time and time and time again in front of like all these audiences and all these people, and even just, outside of the show and getting to travel around the country, is like, oh, I know that I don't want them to believe that negative propaganda about me. I know that that's lies. I know that I'm not a violent extremist, like a terrorist. I know that I'm not mutilating children, or that me, myself, as a child was not mutilated by having someone help me understand my identity. And all of that I know to not be true about me. And that's the propaganda they get. So why am I so willing to believe the propaganda about them, of them being nothing but hateful and nothing but just racist, bigoted, sexist, terrible people that want to ban abortions? And like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like clearly that's all pretty like there's reasons for that, right? Like there's reasons that we like have those kind of claims about like this party right now. And I think that the Trump administration is atrocious, right? And so like that a lot of that needs to be said, because that is indeed what it's based in. However,
and I think
that individual,
yeah,
not so
I think
much.
part of it is, the divide and conquer, right? And if this narrative is created that the people that are anti-trans are unapproachable, you can't talk to them, you can't have a conversation with them, you can't sway them in any way. If that's the narrative, then that keeps us from having these conversations that actually bridge that.
Bingo. And like I will like I just really do believe that like I would so much rather prefer an imperfect ally over like kind of almost anything else in some ways, when I'm talking to somebody that I don't agree with. Like if I can get to that point where we agree on something, like that is such a win right now in such a divided time in our country. And like I understand that like we want to do better and we should be holding each other accountable to things, and that obviously there's a more graceful way to say something, and that it's quite easy, to do harm without intending it. That being said, like right now, in this moment of like, as we are actively descending into very violent, very scary, very fascist government, I will take the imperfect ally. I will take the one baby step in the right direction, as much as it can be frustrating to do, you know, and that education takes time and is labor and is really hard to ask of people. Like, no, we don't deserve to be here. Also, if grandma can't like gender me correctly, like, but is able to kind of like acknowledge that like trans people are people and they're not harming other people, like that's a baby step, right? Like I will take that. And I can take that next step too, you know, with them. And I think that that's been like a really powerful thing for me. And also just like, I've been really surprised at the number of people that are so willing to change their mind. And to be able to kind of be present with it. I've had a number of good old yeehaw cowboys in the Dakotas and in the South come up to me and tell me like, wow, young man, you gave me a lot to think about. I never thought about it that way. That's just a couple minutes of laughing together. If we can like get that much done, you know, by being civil for that little amount of time, like imagine if we could kind of expand our resilience and our capacity, you know, for that patience for each other, to be able to have more of those conversations. Like what good could we do for our community, you know? And I think that that's been really lovely. So I did this tour out of spite. I did this tour, you know, and started it in a place of spitefulness and of kind of anger and of wanting some justice for my community, and to have the last laugh, you know. And that is not the way I'm finishing this tour at all. I am like very, very convinced that like kindness is a currency and we are obligated to spend it on each other as freely as we can, because it is one of the few currencies that I see be that accessible and bring that much change. It is very much a vehicle for that change, and as much as we and kind of our community as a whole, I think like the left, queer folks, trans folks, any marginalized racial group, like pick one, right? As much as every single one of those groups and every single one of those people has every right to be as outraged and hurt as we are right now. That hurt and kind of extending that out onto other people, it really is not going to get us anywhere. But patience and like that compassion, as much as that sounds so hokey, it really does. Like I can really do see it shift with people. They will like mirror that behavior a lot more easily. And yeah, started this out of spite. I'm kind of ending it way more proud and like honored to be of this country than I ever have been. I'm so proud of like, obviously I don't love America's like history and how we like got to be here. Obviously this is like a place that's founded on a lot of really problematic behavior. That being said, like to me, like the concept of like my national identity, my regional identity, like that is really profound to me now, because it means that I am of a group that I really value. I'm of a group that I really respect. There's so many great people in this country, so many lovely people that are just being so kind and so giving and really wonderful community builders and great artists and great cooks and just like hard workers, man, hard workers. And I am so honored to be of that community. And I think that the right, the Republicans, the Trump administration, they don't get to have patriotism. They don't get to have it. It can't be just be theirs. We belong here, right? And like it's ours too. Like that level, that pride is like ours to also have. And I think that that is like an important lesson that I've like gotten on this journey as well, of like being able to kind of like take up space and being able to claim something and trying to change something that we've seen be deeply problematic, right? Into something that's just maybe 1%, just 1% better.
Yeah.
Because maybe someone else can come along and make it 1% better too, you know? And suddenly that really starts to add up. But if we all just give up and we're all just in despair, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's very beautiful, and a couple great sound clips, sound bites. I can't wait to post those and send those off to you, because I think you articulated some things very beautifully there. So can't wait to do that. I'm going to end with an audience question that came up a little while ago. So it's going to sound a little bit out of left field. Did you work with any teaching theaters in your days?
Teaching theaters. I imagine they're like asking about like for like the tour. Did we work with any like theaters that do workshops, or
I
like
think it
did
was
we
back in your
like?
acting days, if you worked with teaching theaters, and they were saying that I'm sure you know what I mean, but apparently you don't. So maybe Bleeding Heart Comedy if you want to expound on that, add a little bit
Call me
more.
Bleeding Heart. That's a good question. I am hoping I'm answering it in the right way. The answer is no, not exactly. I started with a college theater troupe called the Rude Mechanicals at Shepherd University. At the time was Shepherd College. And that was out of the English department. Big love for that group. We did a lot of medieval plays and stuff, and that was kind of educational based, but I would not necessarily say it was a teaching theater. And then from there, like, no, I did kind of all of my work in West Virginia that was a little bit more mine, if you will. We made a little production company called WSP Productions that I turned into an LLC when I was 14. And that gave us kind of the creative freedom to do whatever we wanted. And we performed out of the Timber Frame Folly Theater in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, which is probably the most magical place in the world. It's a beautiful, like, completely hand-built timber frame like structure, and it's in the middle of the woods in Appalachia. And so you really got to kind of like know where it is. And like, we would sell out shows of like 100 plus people, and put on really fun like theater performances there. And there's a lot of other kind of like music and art stuff that happens there. And so that was more of a community space, but it was not a teaching theater. We've gotten to work with a bunch of kind of teaching theaters, and since a lot of comedy clubs do like workshops and classes and things like that, on just this tour, and that's been really cool, because usually those spaces are very inclusive. Like, they're usually very welcoming of queer folks, and I think that's really admirable and really necessary right now. So people actually have those opportunities to maybe try something on in a space that is welcoming. I mean, even just the show that we had in Austin, Texas, with that Cold Town Comedy Theater, pride flags out the wazoo. They have a bunch of really awesome classes and workshops. A lot of the people that work there are queer and trans. Like, we love to see that, right? That's amazing. So to be able to kind of be in the industry and also be a safe haven has been really cool. So I did not when I was kind of in my acting days. I totally would now, love to see it in the comedy world. But yeah, my stuff was a little bit like quite literally in the grass, in the roots. It was an outdoor theater. Does not get much more grassroots than that. But yeah, I'd say that was my background in it.
All right. Well, I think I have to let it lie there. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Ren, for coming on and sharing your story, and for doing this tour and talking about it. It's been wonderful having you.
Oh my God, thank you so much for letting me be here and take up your time, and let me get to kind of talk about stuff. I can talk about this stuff all day, and so super appreciate the space, and also appreciate you creating this platform for everybody to kind of get to share their stories and stuff. It is meaningful, and it like really does mean a lot to people, and so thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Yeah, and let us know when Here to Pee goes global. I want to see you.
We'll see, fam. I mean, I don't know. The UK seems to be really into like Australia. We've gotten more press in Australia than we've gotten in the States.
Wow.
For this tour.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, all right, go off. Australia, we love to see that.
Australia's pretty great.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Shout out to my Aussie friends. Anyways, yes. Y'all, thank you so much for coming tonight, and for being here to support the show, asking your questions. And we will see you very soon. We'll see you on actually tomorrow for Creative Block at 3 p.m. Pacific. So I'll be on there. Maybe Ashley will come join me again. Maybe we'll get Rich on. We'll see. We'll do we do fun stuff on that one. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.